What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. My guest today is Gareth Owen. He's an identity coach, and we met in the container that we're in, and I wanted to bring him on to, so you guys can hear his story, and if you're interested in his coaching, then you can work with him. So we were just talking about it a little bit before I started recording, so I wanted to get right back into it. So, Gareth, how long have you been coaching now?
It's coming up on 9 months, still underneath my full calendar year of it, but it's been a blessing ever since I started.
Awesome. And you were telling me that you and your girlfriend were living in New Zealand, and that's when you decided to launch this, correct?
Correct. So I just traveled over there with her, moved into our first place, and it was right away into a bit of some turmoil. We found some cockroaches in our place that had been undisclosed to us, had to move to a new spot. There was no electricity for 5 days. We finally got electricity going, started handing out resumes, and I got a taste of how quickly I could fall back in to the traditional working route I'd been in. So I knew I had to step into a bit of an uncomfortable zone at that time, which was launching my own business. And I did it. I started acting in alignment with that version of me who was already the coach. The routine again, back into fitness, taking my diet into consideration, my sleep especially. And I started posting about it. And it wasn't long before my first paying client just reached out and essentially paid in full over the DMs because he believed so much in what I was representing. He wanted a piece of it for himself too.
Awesome. You were living in so much alignment that he believed it already.
Yeah, it was the goal for me wasn't to completely switch my income at that point from just only working the coaching, but I was like, I'm going to take this on as a bit of a side hustle, but give it my all, like a plan A. And naturally, to pay some bills, I'm still going to keep up with the level of hospitality as something casual that doesn't take up too much of my mental or social energy space. Right. And I connected with him. We had actually only met one time before, probably around half a year prior to that. So to my knowledge, I was actually, you could say, invisibly nurturing him for a handful of months before he really made that step out of the comfort zone and said, hey man, I see you've launched this. This could be for me. And I really didn't even pitch him on it. I just said, hey, listen, is there anybody else that you know that could benefit from this given what we've already spoken about? He's like, anybody else but me.
Okay. Nice. So is this your first time doing your own business? Or have you had one in the past?
First time doing my own business. I was grateful and blessed to have met my current business partner, Olivier, back in November of 2024. Funny enough, it was an entrepreneur event I had no idea about, but my girlfriend pushed me to go out and get out of my comfort zone. She wanted to go network with some women there. I wanted to go network with some men. And the best conversation I had that night was with this 21-year-old kid named Olivier, who had just driven across the country from Quebec to start a new life in Vancouver. And he was very entrepreneurial. And he offered me this position to be head of content with this digital marketing agency. And that's the first step I took into this entrepreneurial side that offered me a glimpse into what it could look like, both for us as we scaled this business and for myself as I kind of lean more into the identity alignment side for the entrepreneurs.
Got it. Okay, so you're doing both of those things right now.
Yeah, keeping myself busy.
Okay, nice. So are you able to you're just doing those two things full time now?
Doing those two things full time and just a hint of a side job as well, doing some labor construction. It's a bit of a new line of work for me, but at the same time, I prefer to have my calendar filled up compared to empty. And one thing I immediately try to challenge the people I work with on and suggest is how are they scheduling their time and how important is their time to them? Because I know for myself, when I leave myself too much open space, it's easy for that to get filled up with arbitrary things that don't really benefit you in any way. It's okay sometimes, but all the time you get stuck in a really bad pattern. So this way I'm more regimented. I can still have my sleep. I can still be taking care of my diet, my gym routine, and just, spinning a few plates at the same time.
There you go.
Passion, purpose, and also just generating some extra income.
Okay, nice, nice. And then you're saying you just got back to Vancouver because you were living abroad for a while. So how was it living? You said you were in New Zealand for a year, correct?
Hmm.
Okay, so how does that like compare to being in Vancouver?
Compares in a few ways. We had this idea that New Zealand might stand out to us as a second home when we got there, based on how much content we had consumed about it online. And we really believed like this could be our next step. So we went there open-minded, and we found that it was one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to personally, not really realizing also how beautiful Canada is. You're almost like blissfully unaware when you've been living in it your whole life.
Yeah.
We did some amazing hikes, adventures. I met some really cool people, did a few run clubs, got back into running, and it ended up standing out as a important place to me spiritually. They're so invested into their culture and what they believe in and honoring their land, their ancestors. And I really appreciated that aspect of me being somebody coming from a new country and instantly being open arms welcome to learn about what they have to offer and how deeply they care about the nature and who they are. And then when we took that next step from New Zealand to Slovakia to spend some time with the girlfriend's family, that was also then a deep dive into a completely different
Yeah.
European and a bit of Eastern European culture and strong family values, everybody eating around the table, love first, say what's on your mind. And it was beautiful to kind of go from what I'm used to with family in Canada and then get a refreshing wake-up call in New Zealand, what else is out there, and then learn as well to end off the trilogy in Slovakia and the more Eastern European side of it. So I really couldn't have asked for it to go any other way.
Nice. How long were you in Slovakia for?
It was just over 2 months, essentially.
Okay.
And last year, I spent just over 2 weeks there. So
Okay.
it wasn't my first time there, but it was the first time I really sunk my toes in and got a feel
Yeah.
for what was going on.
Yeah, because you were living there for a longer, and it wasn't just like a little trip.
No, it was
Yeah.
really to spend time with that family and transition out of New Zealand and transition back into Canada.
Okay. Nice. Nice. So, what was the just like what made you decide to become like an identity coach then?
At the beginning, I toyed with the idea of just doing fitness coaching because that was the big switch that had to be turned on in my life to really pull myself off of the couch, literally, and put down the controller, step away from the screens and just get a grip. But after I played around with it for a couple months and I didn't really see any results, sorry, like I needed the external validation at the start, I was like, you know what? I think I can go one level deeper, and fitness is still going to be a key component of what I teach because it has been to me. I'm going to stay true to my morals, but the identity on the deeper level, especially sometimes when we're touching into the subconscious mind, it's controlling a level of our lives that most people aren't aware of. So I leaned into that side. So the pillar in the middle being about working on your inner identity, the subconscious mind, and then the kind of organic pillars around that being fitness and health, your spirituality, whatever you choose to embrace, and then also just love. And love being a bit more vague, being those friendships, family, and anything in between, even the self-love. So the identity being that main pillar, it spoke the most to me based on what I've gone through so far in my life, just at 25 here, and building off of those other branches from there.
Okay, nice, nice. So, in saying that, when you talk about like the love pillar, do you just mean you help them work on their relationships? Like, how far do you go into that? I know, or do you mostly focus on their like self work first, and then that's going to help with the other relationships?
Yeah, it always starts the same. It always starts with the self work, and I can usually start to understand and hear certain language people are using towards themselves that they aren't conscious of. And that's just kind of a hint into maybe where their mind is at during those quiet times when the doors are closed and nobody else is there. And I feel like that's where I needed to really start with myself. Funny enough, like if you can imagine it, I would spend countless hours in my room from 16 to 22, sat there like hunched shoulders at the computer, locked in, grinding some video games. And I had one of those double sliding glass mirrors for the closet on my right. And so many nights I would basically wake up from playing and sit back and look at myself in the mirror. And I would have those really negative conversations, sometimes out loud, even with myself, because I was not proud of who I was showing up as. It was affecting my relationships closest to me, like family. It was definitely affecting my relationships in any sort of dating pool, right? Nobody wants to even take you into consideration. You feel insignificant. And it was affecting the relationship with myself. So I knew, like, one of those days back around 2021, early 2022, it was my breaking point of like, really, now or never. And I don't know if you can relate or you've spoken to anybody in the past that can relate, but I'm somebody who can benefit from having the back up against the wall. Sometimes other people crumble at that point. And that was really the turning point to start focusing on the self-talk first. When I began working with people, focusing on their self-talk first, and basically, depending on where they wanted to go, their main goal with the coaching, definitely the pillar of love and self-love was something we tackled because it's always an open space. Yeah. Funny enough, I never claim or use or try to poke at anything therapy related, but out of the handful of people who work with me now, they've all mentioned the word therapeutic in at least one point or another during the span of months working with me. So I think what I found is we don't really allow ourselves to have that space in our own lives to either really attack those difficult things, sometimes with ourselves, but even more, a lot of men, I've noticed, especially guys my age, it's almost like they have this screen set up where they never allow those emotions in with themselves. But if you provide that open space and unlock it for them to share with you, like, listen, this is a clean slate. Whatever goes, goes, and we're not talking about it anywhere else. But let's get through this because I want to see you achieve something. That's what this is all about. Suddenly that wall drops.
So that pillar was the
love.
You said the love pillar. And then, so you said you still focus on fitness. So how far do you go into that? Do you give them a workout plan, or how do you do that part?
Yeah. So fitness wise, I do provide them different exercises to try out based off of their own fitness level. The one gentleman I worked with mainly had spent time in the gym, time on, time off, and kept bailing out of his routine. So I knew it was a matter of he was kind of making it too difficult for himself to A, show up, and then B, just keep consistent once he got through the door. So I provided him with different layers of exercises to do depending on which day he was going through. Like I mentioned to you, I know the benefit that I had in my life, so I know it has to be a pillar for him if he finds the same love with it that I discovered. Yeah. And from there, he kind of told me which exercises he liked, which ones he didn't from those he tried. And we just cut and then glued in the ones that he already loved. And then made those small iterations along the way, just like when I was being personally trained the first time I was ever in a gym. But like I mentioned, that being kind of a sub pillar in it, I did allow them to take a level of agency with it. And then definitely don't hesitate to ask me questions, send me videos for form checks, right? I'm feeling it here. Is this where I want? And I can provide them that feedback and insight that I've learned as well myself in the gym.
Perfect. And then remind me again, what was the third pillar again?
So it's all about, it's all about fitness and health as that first one, the love and self-love second. And I believe I mentioned that third one was a level of spirituality, as well as just being more connected to a purpose, right? Yeah. That's where it really leads for me. And I'm not somebody who grew up necessarily spiritual or religious. I'd say my mom did a great job of allowing me to land somewhere in the middle and be very open. And it's allowed me to find the light through some of the darkest times in my life, but it's also allowed me to have so many more conversations with others that I think otherwise I would be turned away from if I was just believing one way or another. So I think if you invest in those three pillars every day, even if it's the smallest investment, that compounding effect is undeniable for that larger pillar in the middle of your identity.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, that's good. I was raised the same way. Like my mom didn't really push anything and wanted us to find it on our own when we were ready.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So then you can definitely relate. It just provides a much more open experience for you to really decide what you like, what you disagree with, but also have that space to have those conversations. I think it's the coolest part.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well let me ask you this. So, what do you say when people say like working on your identity and these kind of things? Like how you said you made the decision that this is what you're going to do. You're going to be the identity coach and you're going to live this way, correct? So, do you do like how Nick says to do like daily meditations and visualize what your future is going to be? Is that something you personally do or have your clients do?
Yeah, I offered this one insightful visualization to them, which I personally only touched on a couple times, but once he took part in it, he started doing it more often to really ground himself. And to answer your question mainly there, I do a small handful of kind of here and there meditations when I'm really feeling those waves, and especially when I'm getting to the lower part, like those definitely ground me and bring me back to rise to the next occasion. But this visualization has been a big thing for me, right? You hear people like Napoleon Hill talk about it. Nick obviously talks about it in the impact community. Shout out the cult leader, as well as all these people who have walked these paths before us. They know the power of it. And it's just the strangers who haven't embraced it yet that think it's so wild and think it's out of the blue and it would never work for me. But to go back to it, the visualization I offered him was he was saying, I just can't find the reason, I can't find the purpose for me to show up for myself every day, sometimes in my relationship with my girlfriend, in the relationship with myself when it comes to building my own AI and launching it, and also showing up for my family, right? I struggle with that. Even for my clients I'm working with, like I don't want to go out to work and work on those projects because they just bog me down and drain my energy. And I'm kind of listening to the language, right? And I'm thinking, okay, I know where this is going. I think we need to really pivot hard and offer him this suggestion. So I said, can I suggest something to you? He's like, sure. I said, I want you to imagine now you're back at work and you're working on this project with the deadline coming up for this big paying client, right? Everybody's going to get some money, but then you remind yourself, right, this is not what it's about. And then you wonder and decide to imagine, why is this guy breathing down my neck a bit, right? And if it's you sitting in your chair at work, working on the task, stressing, literally sweating, working effortlessly at this, you zoom out. And it's kind of like in GTA 5 when you're switching characters and you go boom, 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 boom. And I want you to switch characters into that guy's seat. So you're switching roles into the person you've been working so hard for that you never met. And when you go there, I want you to imagine and visualize all the work you just did and completed and gave him at the deadline changed that guy's life in the sense that his daughter, whose birthday is coming up next week, had the best birthday ever because daddy was happy with the results his company got due to working with you guys. He was better around the family. He was smiling and helping people around the house. He was kinder to strangers on the streets. That guy was able to get up and keep going in the mirror when he was having a hard time, right? We suddenly really step back from the selfish approach. I don't feel like doing it for me. And instead you chose to ask yourself and visualize who gets to experience this joy if I complete this? And what does it look like for them? So really a very easy representation of that is, what do I end up giving from this compared to what do I end up getting from doing this? In my life, whenever I thought about that get, it always comes back to me. But when it's give, it's always me last. And I'm not saying there's not a time and place for each, but when one really starts to outweigh the other, not as many people want to be around you. You're potentially picking up a couple more toxic traits you're not proud of. But when you're doing the opposite as well in the extreme, and you always put yourself last, it's not great either. So you find that equilibrium somewhere in the middle to really put yourself, which I find the most helpful, in their shoes. If everything went right and you killed this deadline maybe you do end up getting a promotion on the back end of it, right? Maybe you do end up getting lifted up in front of the rest of the team and praised by your boss. An email from that bigger company saying, were you the head designer on this project that we just hit the deadline for? You say, yes, I just want to thank you so much. And he tells you all the blessings that came from you doing your job, right? Suddenly it became a lot less selfish and a lot more selfless.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to frame it.
Yeah, it's really powerful to take into bite-sized pieces in my life when I've been going through it like that, when I told you about the man in the mirror. And I knew it could help him too, so I had to share it.
Nice. Nice. Did that work for him? Did he take the feedback well?
It worked for him really well. That was within our first 3 weeks of working together. And by the time we were done doing this brief coaching stint with him in just over 2 months, he had told me in the feedback and review process just how impactful that exercise had been on him and how it really changed the way he was showing up with that job and his boss, as well as how he was showing up for himself. And the few free the few free clients that had, shown interest in this new software he was launching. Suddenly he could just, yes, he is the man at the keyboard, but he was visualizing all the things that were going to go right and be blessed for everybody else if he just did his job, which he already knew how to do. He was qualified. So he was able to remove levels of the stress by genuinely just putting himself out in somebody else's shoes.
Awesome. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, it felt really good.
So what would you tell people that think that like it wouldn't work for them? Like these kind of exercises?
Yeah, I'd initially ask them, what makes you think that, right? What kind of conversations have you had in the past to believe this wouldn't work for you? Right? When you tell yourself, man, this wouldn't work for me, what's the one common denominator that keeps coming up in that ruminating thought of doubt? Right? It usually stems back to something that's happened in our past, right? For me, it wasn't necessarily going all the way back to childhood, but it was going back to my teenage years and just feeling like I was invisible. And I just had to put my foot down. When I felt invisible, I had different mentorship opportunities, friendships come and go. I probably even had the odd relationship I wasn't even aware of forming around me. But because I felt invisible, I didn't let any of that in. So I was essentially giving off the energy of this doesn't work for me. But I wasn't even embracing the chance, what if this worked for me?
Yeah.
Right? So I'd almost challenge those people, where is that doubt coming from? And unpack it a bit and not dwell on it too much, but just isolate it as, listen, we can see it's this event that happened with your teacher telling you weren't smart 10 years ago and you're still holding on to it. That's a limiting belief that you planted in there, whether you believe it or not. And it's our job. It's not my job. It's our job to do whatever we can to replant new pieces of belief around there and still water that old belief so we don't just rip it out. We're building off of forgiveness here, right? Okay. But we're building around it to grow what we're creating into those pillars I'm describing. Instead of taking this approach of just like, let's dig up and tear up the dirt and chuck out the root and make a goddamn mess and do some damage along the way just to plant something nice there. It's like, how about we just build around it and still nurture and still forgive? Because I found that's what it always came back to in my life, right? It's a completely different energy when I'm upset at you for something you said to me in a state that you weren't proud of, and I'm just going to give you the same energy back compared to you said those things to me. It might have hurt me in that moment, but now I'm looking at it with a completely different lens and I can fully forgive. Do you think that's going to spark much more of that energy? Probably not, because it's really hard to get angry at somebody that says, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you.
Okay. So have you had to work with a few clients on like even finding what like would have caused their limiting beliefs?
I have. It's been just a couple I'd say, out of the handful. But what I noticed, the commonality with it is it's a lack of vision. It's a lack of purpose. And within that lack of belief and purpose, you find those holes where the limiting beliefs lie, and they're kind of running the show, kind of like a puppet master. And I would say it's almost my role to just highlight and put the spotlight on those gaps. And as we go through the stages of calls and compounding weeks of working together, it's building those bridges for them. So every time they get to this feedback loop, instead of falling back into the hole, and it's like game over, restart, we built a new bridge. So you walk over that bridge with a different lens. You're seeing life in a different way. You're speaking to people in a more loving tone, and then you keep going, almost like a next level.
Yeah.
It may sound like what I'm explaining to you is kind of like a video game, and I'm kind of all for that level of gamifying life, because I knew how important it was for me to transition from a lost control of a habit with video games, right? That at the time I just was not proud of. And instead of uprooting, chuck it out, I hate you, I was like, how can I still transform this into something useful? And I'm sure you've seen the odd podcast, video, shorts about gamifying your life. And it just made the most sense to me. It's like, let's find ways that you can just level up your character and experience a better life as a result. And I found the more people openly talked about what they were going through and identifying the great things they were already doing, it really started to put a damper on those limiting beliefs that they were telling me in the onboarding call within the first couple of weeks of coaching. Enough by week 3, minimum, they're already starting to act in alignment with the person they want to become, which I'm sure you know when you went on your journey. Yeah. It's all about embodying that version before you get there, what Nick preaches as well. Yeah. Once you experience that for the first time, you're like, holy shit, like these guys weren't lying to me this whole time.
Yeah, because I mean, I dealt with the same thing of limiting beliefs last year when I was starting my business. But then the more I did it, then the better, like the less I had to like tell myself that, you know, the less those thoughts came up, I guess you could say. And then the more I've worked, you know, on my identity, work being the embodiment this year, it just, you know, then they just come up less and less.
Yeah, I felt like the big game changer, which I feel like you're describing right there, is it's not about removing the voice altogether, because down the line, when the voice still shows up, if you thought you had removed it and he comes calling back, welcome to a windy road of who knows what comes next, you know, compared to when we're talking about this lens of forgiving, this lens of still nurturing something that we still need to heal, like a wound, whether it's a belief that's hurting you or something from the past you're still holding on to with somebody else. If you're still aware of that voice and you offer that voice a level of forgiveness, but you don't forget to keep building the other self. If this is self 2, you keep building self 1, new and improved, to outweigh that voice. Which one's going to be louder on most days? The way you just described it to me, the new self 1 is much louder. So whenever you hear the little voice nagging you, trying to take you down, trying to wreck your psyche that day, it's like, I hear you, right? I understand you, but you're not in control anymore. Like, we're running our tone every single day with this guy in charge. But I feel like it's the hardest part is actually when you're unaware of all of this and you don't know who's running the show of your own life.
Yeah.
And until you kind of have that first conversation with yourself where you kind of get smacked across the face silly, you're like, hold on. Like, who made that decision that I wasn't proud of last week? Was that the person I want to be, or is that the person I am right now? For me, it always came back to, oh, that's the person who I am right now that's still pulling me down like an anchor.
Yeah.
But this version of me that you and I are building up every day, it's like a balloon, right? It's pulling us up to better places. I think the big thing is once people can identify it, they put a bit more energy into the version of them that brings themselves up. It's natural that they won't be as easy to fall victim to the version of them that's pulling them back down. because it's outweighing it now.
Yeah. Yeah, the key is noticing that negative self-talk and noticing those things, because like you said, a lot of people don't realize that's how they've been talking to themselves, and it could have been for like years. So it can take time, like we said, to build up that new positive self-talk and become that new person, but you have to keep working on it every day.
Definitely. Very well said.
So, because that's what I realized is my mom was always very encouraging of me growing up, so I wasn't really sure of like where the limiting beliefs would have come from, but I realized it's from past relationships that were negative, and that's where the negative self-talk and these limiting beliefs came from. It was from these past relationships, because my mom has always been, the person that said you can always do whatever you want to do. So yeah, so but like you said, it can take you realizing where you have to, think about it and then find out where it came from and then know like how to rectify it and then say these positive things.
Exactly. And if you don't mind, I'll just give like a little bit of an input into a period of my life that was really hard for me, where this is a prime example of limiting beliefs could have torn me away. But basically, before I was even 18, I went on a very sporadic walk with my dad where he just knocked on my door. I was playing Rocket League or something. And I was kind of like, leave me alone. And he's like, no, come on, let's go for a walk. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Right. And he took me for a walk around midnight there around the block. There's nobody else outside. And sure enough, we get on this walk and he tells me, like, listen, son, I've been diagnosed with cancer. And they're telling me this isn't looking good for us, but I need you to be strong. I need you to be there for mom. I need you to keep carrying on what we have in our family, right? Never stop. And it was a very brief walk and it was a brief conversation, but it really made me open my eyes to, wow, like I'm 17 and I'm already realizing how finite life is. Like, I don't know how much longer dad's going to be around. Over the coming months, they tell my dad, like, you have less than 3 years to live, right? And we were like, wow, 3 years. Like, there's so many more things that are supposed to happen for me, right? This is the selfish look. There's so many things that were supposed to happen for me that I'm not going to get now with him. And I was already starting to think again about get from him compared to what can I give? And fast forward, he ended up making it and pushing through over 6, almost 7 years. And in July 2024 there, he passed away when I wasn't even by his side. I was actually surrounded by friends on a little camping trip. Just finished dinner when I got the call that he had moved on in hospice. And it felt like a part of me had left my soul. It felt like I was no longer whole.
I bet.
And knowing my mom was struggling, knowing the family was going through it, and I couldn't even be there for that support was hard. But I knew there had to be something on the other end of this tunnel, right? I knew that couldn't be it. And I wish I could have developed this sooner, but that's another example of the back against the wall moment where this is the time for change. It's now or never. Like, do this for him. Do this for mom. Do this for my family. Like, what does my legacy become if I still allow this negative self-talk to run my day, especially going through grief now? And I made it my purpose, right? To make him proud every day in one way or another. And he was always a coach to me in baseball my whole life. So it was just a simple, like A plus B equals C to also take on a level of this coaching and try it. I didn't know how it would go, but I knew he poured so much love, belief, energy, discipline into me growing up and the teammates that I could probably pass that on to somebody else as well. And I found that I could really find a way to navigate through one of the hardest times in my life that I wouldn't wish upon even my worst enemy. But I found the light. And even though I was going through the tunnel with spiraling and hard days and, crying yourself to sleep or wondering, like, should I still be here? Like, there's so many things we should have still been able to do. I never lost track of the light at the end of the tunnel. So we get through now on this other side. And I realize I can be the type of person by embodying that for the last 2 years, I can be the type of person who helps others who either have gone through something similar,
Nice.
they have no recognition or similarity at all to it, but they want to be aware of, hey, my parents are still around and I haven't spoken to my dad in 6 months, right? And just having that conversation with them, saying like, listen, if everything changed and flipped on its head tomorrow and that person was no longer in your life, is there anything you'd regret not saying? And it's like, whoa, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because I put
That's a good
myself and I
question.
visualized that scenario. So it's just powerful to always take the route of, I'm not going to ignore the hard things I'm going through, and I'm going to give myself that space to feel it, but focus on the light at the end of the tunnel.
Now that you're back in Vancouver, is your girlfriend back with you in Vancouver, or did she stay over there in Slovakia?
Yeah, so currently she isn't back yet. We're essentially having this 2 to 3 month gap before the next time we can see each other, which in a way is providing us, I'd argue, like that final challenge to work through and
Yeah.
put a relationship to the test, which is already filled with so much love. It's like long distance after being together for 2 years, basically inseparable, but over a year now of living together. It's been hard, right? There's
Oh,
no
sure.
way around it. At the same time, through these highs and lows already since we last saw each other over a month ago, it's always reminding ourselves of, even though we're busy, we're still working on ourselves. We're still offering those messages of support to each other. Hearing their voice is so refreshing. And it isn't all sadness, right? I remind myself, isn't it a blessing that FaceTime exists?
Right?
Like, isn't it a blessing that we don't have to speak to each other only by mail?
Yeah.
You know, there are still these things where I get to see you, I get to hear you. I still can essentially feel what you're feeling through that call in real time. Like, what a blessing. Same idea. It's very simple to fall into the sadness. I'm not going to see her for a handful of months. What does that look like? Uncertainty. Oh my goodness. Instead, what do we still have? I can't help but shake that approach, even if it sounds a little bit crazy than the normal. Like, I can't help but view it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. You don't want to fall into dwelling on the negative things.
No, have you ever experienced something similar with your partner, or faced those really good times and then, oh, okay, this is a change we got to work through together?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been like changes with like me and my now wife, but more kind of rockier at the beginning, like moving in together, and then kind of those like pains of, living in the same place with someone. But yeah, I mean, not so much in the relationship, but just more like things like in our lives happening, like with our kids being, both of our kids being born were in the NICU, so then navigating that, that was tougher with when our daughter was born, because then we had our son. Luckily, her mom could come and stay with us so that we could go to the NICU with our daughter, because our son was too little to go into the NICU. So that was tough last year, managing that, and then still trying to get to. I was still working, and because I was saving my vacation for when our daughter came home, because I didn't want to burn through all of it while she was in the NICU. So I saved my vacation till when she came home, so that way we could all be there together. But yeah, that was probably one of the more challenging things for sure.
Way to go. It sounds like you guys like worked through that and came out the other end of that tunnel. So I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, it was luckily, at least with our son, what was kind of a blessing was, since he was in the NICU for 10 days, we already got to practice doing a lot of things that we probably would have been struggling with at home. So a lot of parents, you're in the hospital for just a day or 3 days, and then you go home, and then you have to figure out a lot of stuff on your own. But luckily with us, we could basically got trained by nurses. I mean, my wife is a nurse, but it's our first time having a baby and having one that small. So, getting trained on, like, they showed us how to bathe him and do all these things. So then by the time we took him home, we weren't really freaking out, because we had already spent so much time being like supervised. So when we brought him home, we were like, okay, this is easy now, because in the hospital, he has hooked up to all these things. We have to be careful and can't move him so much. So then once he's home, he's not hooked up to anything. I'm like, wow, this is so much easier now to do everything.
Already got some time to prepare for it. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
How do you find fatherhood?
I've really enjoyed it. I've been wanting to be a father for a little while. We were just having a hard time having kids at first, but we finally got that handled, and then end up having kids right back to back. So, but it's been great. I've been, like I said, I had wanted to be a dad for a long time, and I'd been married before, but I knew I didn't want to have kids with her because that was just a horrible relationship. So once I've been with my wife, I knew this was the person, and yeah, it's been great. It's been pretty challenging. Because even though we tried to do our research on like how to parent and stuff, it's still, there's still the challenges of figuring stuff out. Mostly just, not, it's mostly been just keeping our son from like hurting himself or now hurting his sister. Those are the challenging.
I wish I could say I relate, but I'm an only child. So I guess what my parents would have had to face was like how we could stop him from hurting himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just getting into trouble.
There's that phase when you're a toddler, because that's like what all boys do. Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me as well, as like visualization and fatherhood. And I've also always known, like down the line, when I'm choosing that right partner, that's something we have to have in alignment, because so many things that I've experienced in my life growing up, and amazing things of having these cousins that felt more like brothers and sisters, even though I was only child. Like that's the type of big family for support I know I want to create life and place it into as well, because it's extremely beneficial.
Yeah.
If I was an only child and I had super distant cousins, either long distance wise or just because our parents didn't like each other, so we never visited each other, like that would be really hard. Because then you probably do become the only child who's introverted their whole life and never gets the spaces to break out. Whereas, although I didn't have siblings, I had that cousin that was within 7 months age of me.
Nice.
And we went through those growing pains of hating each other, but then almost like merging through friendship and love and connection to now we're like this. We even work together a little bit.
Nice.
So I know I want my kids in the future to experience what I did with that big family feeling.
Yeah.
And, visit the island cabin where we grew up and visit each other's houses for sleepovers and build the forts in the living room. And I can't fall asleep because I hear them chatting all night. Like I want to feel that just like my mom, my aunt, my dad did,
Yeah.
Just little glimpses of that. Even the coaching thing you mentioned with my dad in baseball. It's like I would love to have that for my son or daughter, and somebody being able to raise somebody to prosper, right?
Yeah.
To believe in themselves. I think it's a beautiful opportunity. So I'm so happy for you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't play sports when I was growing up. I just did well, no, I take that back. I did do swimming when I was a kid, but never like team sports like that. I was in like band and like marching band and playing in band. So and I've given drum lessons before, so that's what I'm going to start with my son. I've already kind of started giving him drum lessons, but he's 2, so he's picked up some stuff, but it's, once he gets to be about 3, I think he'll start to pick it up a little faster.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe tomorrow you show him Whiplash.
Yeah.
And he'll have a good idea of how strong he wants to become.
Right. Actually, I still haven't even seen that movie. I've been wanting to watch that movie still.
I mean, hey, like you said, if you're teaching him drums and you know how to play and you have that background in music, all I know is clarinet. And even now I've probably forgotten it. But clarinet and singing and just the intensity of that movie, like the amazing acting performances, like they deserved all the accolades, awards, reviews they received. But it definitely shows you like those extremes of the mentor and the mentee, right? And what extent they'll go to achieve the desired result in that movie. So definitely watch it with you or your wife, and it's worth it. If you're gonna spend 2 hours watching something, like that's a good way to do it.
Okay, yeah, that's on my list of movies to watch for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, this was a great conversation. Unfortunately, I need to start getting ready for my other job on the railroad, but this is a good time.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity as well, and hopefully the edits around the if internet cutouts won't be hard for you, but I really appreciate this space, and hopefully, if anybody felt touched by it, moved by it, they let me know down below.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we can see what comes.
Exactly. Where would be the best place for them to find you?
I'd say the best place would just be over on Instagram. It's just my name on here, Gareth.Owen.
Okay.
And feel free to shoot me over a message if you have a question about anything or even something that you felt impacted by in this conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool, man. Well, this is great.
I appreciate the space and the time, Sam. You're a legend. Thank you.